then founded in Britain to defend natural theology. The fact is that all along the line, Christians and scientists have been in dialogue with one another, and not at all seeing science as opposed to the Christian faith. So this is not any kind of new movement or capitulation, not at all. This is a historical process, and we simply stand at the current edge of it.
His second contention in the debate, what he tended to want to argue, was that where was God throughout human history? He really brought up the problem of evil a lot. And why in human history is God so late to the game? What about all the horrible things that people have been through prior to Christ and so on? So he had kind of a argument from outrage on what he saw as God being absent.
It's not clear exactly what this argument is, Kevin. I'm not sure that Hitchens himself understands.
Well, I called it an argument from outrage. I'm not even sure that would completely characterize it.
I mean, for example, when I asked him in Dallas, I said, you say that God has delayed 98,000 years before sending Christ to humanity, and that this is very, very late in the game. And I said, well, that seems to me that what counts as late is relative. If humanity endures for another 100,000 years, then it would turn out that Christ came right in the middle of human history, wouldn't it? And so it wouldn't be late in the game. And he said, well, yeah, I guess that's right. I mean, it was as though he virtually conceded the point. So the argument can't be that it's late or too late for Christ to come. It must be, well, what happened to all those people that died before Christ came? But gosh, Christians believe that God has always been active in human history, and we have a record of salvation history in the nation of Israel and how God has been preparing Israel for the advent of the Messiah. And we believe that Christ's atoning death is efficacious for everyone who came before Christ and will be salvific or will save persons who respond in an appropriate way to God's revelation to them. So there's just not really a problem there that I can see.
Notice that it's an internal question, internal to Christianity, internal to God's existence, and I thought he's supposed to be a big atheist. I mean, he's arguing, why is God, who apparently exists, so late? Now, the implications are that means God doesn't exist. But he's not really arguing for atheism. He's arguing an internal problem of God's timing.
Well, that's very interesting, Kevin, because on this panel discussion, when Doug Wilson pointed out that Christ's death was efficacious for those who came before Christ, it's not as though these people were neglected or overlooked. Hitchens admitted, well, yes, that solves the problem, but I don't see any reason to believe in Christianity. Well, as you say, that just evacuates the argument of any significance then. The issue will be then, do we have good reasons to believe Christianity is true? And it will not be an objection to Christianity to say, well, God overlooked all those folks, because he admits that on Christianity, they're not overlooked. So where's the argument? Where's the objection? I don't see it.
When you watch the debate, Christopher Hitchens at the end just kind of forgoes his final statement and saying, well, look, I'm not going to get anywhere with this William Lane Craig guy. I mean, he's going to answer everything I say. So he wanted to get right to the Q&A, question and answer. Why do you think that is?
Oh, that was a real shock to me, too. I gave my closing statement, and then Hugh Hewitt got up to have Hitchens give his closing statement. Hitchens just waived the closing statement, said he didn't want to give one. And so Hewitt then went to the audience directly for questions. It seemed as though Hitchens had just an attitude of resignation and almost passivity by that point.
Well, he feels like he can handle the layman a little easier, I'm afraid. I mean, he does want to get that interaction so that he's more comfortable dealing with people who have less complex questions and so on. Now, I'm not going to accuse him of purposely punting to that, but again, it is a dependence on his rhetorical skill and his persuasiveness that he was going to at this point.
He was unusually subdued in that debate. I don't know if it was because of the venue or what, but he didn't really get into his rhetoric until his rebuttal speech, and then he began to appeal to the North Korean dictator and these other examples of his purple prose, but by then it was really too late. And so I think by the time of the final speech, he was just ready to be done with it.
Dr. Craig, as we conclude, there was something encouraging that Christopher Hitchens said, and that is he wanted to come to the States and interact with all these Christians who've been emailing him and flaming him and everything in the world, and he was willing to come and be among us and come to our venues and say, okay, let's talk about this. But he made a comment at the panel that he's been treated so well by the Christian community.
Yes.
So he was very appreciative of how well he was treated. And he was certainly given a lot of time to talk on that panel.
Yes, that's right. He wasn't bullied or outnumbered in that sense. And he is taking more and more speaking engagements for Christian audiences, which I thought was intriguing. The cynic in me thinks that, well, he's just discovered another source of big fat honoraria, and that the Christian community is willing to pay big dollars to get him to come. But on the other hand, there may be a genuine desire here for real dialogue with Christians, to hear what they have to say and to share his perspective. And I hope that that's his motive.
Any comments on his book? Did you go through it, God is Not Great?
I did not go through the book myself, Kevin, because I have to shepherd my reading time very carefully, or I can become distracted from the focus of my scholarly research, which is on a quite different topic. What I did do was I asked my teaching assistant, Joe Gora, to go through Hitchens' works and to find any passages in the books that would address any of the 5 arguments for God's existence that I typically use in my debates. And so Joe got back to me with whatever Hitchens might have said about the cosmological or the fine-tuning argument or the moral argument, and there just really wasn't very much there, frankly. He didn't address these in his books any more than he did in the debate. So I didn't read the book through myself, no. I just asked my research assistant to look for the important and relevant parts of it.
Seems to be a rant against the religious right, and I find this quite often. People don't have a problem with God or Christianity or Christ, but they are afraid of the religious right and the theocracy, and that they're all going to come in our business and bedrooms, and we're not going to have any freedoms. And so if that's your beef, fine. But what does that have to do with whether God exists and whether Christianity is true?
Boy, that's right. There are plenty of Christians who have a beef with the religious right as well, and they don't think that disproves the existence of God or the resurrection of Jesus. So we mustn't think that these political issues are at all essential to the truth of the Christian worldview.
Absolutely. One final comment from you, Bill. Why are these atheist books such bestsellers? I guess because they would have an audience. I guess Christians and religious people would be curious about them. But Hitchens' book, along with the other so-called new atheists, have of late been very good on the bestseller list.
Yeah, they have obviously scratched an itch in our culture, haven't they? And I think they have raised the consciousness of atheism in our culture in a way that Richard Dawkins, for example, said was his goal. And I'm not sure what to attribute this to, except for a kind of increasing secularism in American Western society that you already see in Europe and in Canada, for example, and now is becoming very vociferous in the United States. And this really struck a chord. Probably the attacks of 9/11, I think, poisoned many people's minds against fundamentalist religion, and Christianity got tarred with the same brush. And certainly these new atheists are guilty of lumping all religious believers together and condemning them all for the atrocities of these extremists.
Dr. Craig, will there be a Dawkins debate?
No. He has resolutely refused to debate, and he's been approached by very high-level folks who have set up previous events that he has done with John Lennox, and he's just adamant it's not going to happen.
Thank you so much for listening to Reasonable Faith with Dr. William I. Craig. One more time, if you would like to start a Reasonable Faith chapter in your area, information is at reasonablefaith.org. And by the way, if you appreciate the information that you get at reasonablefaith.org and you would like to see these podcasts continue and see us branch out even further, then be a partner with us. You can find out how when you go to reasonablefaith.org. Your financial and prayer support means a great deal to us. That's reasonablefaith.org, and we'll see you next time on Reasonable Faith with Dr. William Lane Craig.